We are the higher self of the One, known to this instrument in the language system terms as Melissa Lynn Saito, whose incarnation began in this timeline of 1970. And we greet you now in light and the love of the One Infinite Creator. We are now going to address the queries which have been presented today through this instrument's vibrations at this time, which will allow the entity with a deeper understanding of its true inner nature. However, we must warn that the energies which will be shared today through this instrument will be of such a nature that the effect of the inner consciousness of the entity known as Melissa Lynn Saito must be chosen by its own inner heart, and only those thought forms which resonate must be accepted within the self. We, as the higher self of the entity, shall now address the queries using the vibratory sound complex patterns of your planet. Further, the query relates with the understanding of the aspect regarding the understanding of its soul's identity and its past timelines. We are now going to state that its soul's identity in this timeline is that of a so-called entity known as, in the language terms, as the entity known as a starseed who is here in this timeline for the purpose of mastery of the vibration of the understanding of the essence of love and compassion within the self. The entity known as Melissa Lynn Saito must remember that it is a starseed who can attain ascension into the new earth timeline by learning the lessons of love within each moment of the timeline. After the mastery of the vibration of love within each moment, it will find itself gathering enough potential to harness the energies of the vibration of love that will allow it to graduate or enter into the new earth vibration of the fourth density consciousness. This is the primary purpose of the entity in this timeline, to attain graduation into the new earth. There are other secondary purposes such as the mastery of emotional states of consciousness and other states of vibration, of understanding about the essence of its true self through alignment with the spiritual complex. Furthermore, the entity, after having learned the many lessons, will eventually align with the truest nature of its reality. Furthermore, we shall now address its past timelines, and prior to this, it was found in the lands as known by your people as the lands of America. In the timeline of 1909, it was known by the name of Franklin. The basic lesson and the catalyst that was presented in the timeline for the entity was to master the essence of communion with the divine consciousness of the self by learning to recognize that all the psychological suffering which it faced in the timeline was caused because of too much thought forms in the mind complex which fogged its identity. Furthermore, the entity was then able to have a higher level of space and time experience in that reality, which eventually allowed the entity to master the essence of the self and gain a deeper reality. Furthermore, the entity in the timeline, after learning the essence of overcoming the vibration of attachment with the outside world, since it worked as a entity in the lands of Earth planet, as a entity who worked as a shopkeeper as known by your people in the timeline. Through this process, it recognized and learns the many lessons of interacting with other entities. Eventually, through its interaction with others, it recognized how to identify the deeper aspect of the self, which furthermore allowed it to cross over in the timeline of the space and time vibration as known by your people as the timeline of 1969 after having learned the many lessons within the self. Further, the entity was then found prior to this in the timeline of the location of the lands of Australia, wherein it was known by the name of John. In the time of 1754, its major purpose was to learn the lesson as a so-called surgeon and a magistrate in the timeline, which allowed it to understand how to serve others. Its focus in the timeline was primarily to choose the pathway of service to others, which was of a nature a enabling factor for the entity within the vibration of the self. Furthermore, the entity, after having learned the many lessons of the timeline, allowed it to find a deeper essence of the mind, the body, and the spirit complex. Furthermore, the entity was also able to learn the essence of the mastery of inner reality within the self. This entity also learned the aspect of inner vibration of the mastery of the self. Furthermore, we, as the higher self of the entity, must state that the entity learns the many lessons about its own inner nature in the timeline as it chose the pathway of service to others in the time, and it crossed over in the space-time of around 1838. Furthermore, the entity was then found prior to this in one of the timelines in the lands of Germany, as it was known by the name of Magdalena, as a woman entity in the time of 1675. In the lands of Germany, its major focus was on trying to vibrate in that level as a woman entity with a focus on trying to master the essence of understanding the open vibration of rhythm of consciousness and to understand the patterns of language of the Earth planet. This entity was interested in the field of music in that time, which taught it the many essence about the aspects of language in the space and time vibration. As it learned language in the time, it became oriented more and more towards the working of the LRA energy center. Furthermore, after learning this lesson, it crossed over in the space-time of 1694, and prior to this, it was found in the timeline of the lands of Lemuria at a time period of around 37,000 years ago. The major focus of this entity was on learning the lessons of the mastery of the vibration of self-awareness as it interacted with other entities in the timeline. Furthermore, prior to this, it was found in the space and time location of the lands of the planet of its origin in the planet of Andromeda B. It was known by the name of Eon, which meant the awakened one. Hence we leave you now, beloveds, in light and love of the one Creator. Go forth, rejoicing in power and peace. Bye.